Okay, boys and girls, I have sat down and I have finally looked into this Chaos Zero nightmare situation. And boy, is it a shit show. There is so many things going on. I don't even know where to begin. I guess we start off with what the internet actually thinks is happening over here on the western side of the hemisphere. And of course, the internet turns it into the greatest form of entertainment to present the situation. Nothing is more entertaining than saying, hey guys, this game is under deep shit right now because incels and pencil dick dweebs on the internet who vicariously live through these PNGs because they want women to tell them things inside of the game that women will never tell them in real life because these motherfuckers never go outside to actually shoot their shot. Yeah, that's the most entertaining way to say the reason CZN is in hot water is, and the devs are begging for forgiveness and that they're going to change everything in the game, change the story and all that, is because incels on the internet are popping off. As much as I would like to entertain that analysis, I don't think that's the case. Not based off of all of the aggregated vacuum condensed data that's on Reddit. And then the biggest source of it all that corroborates the shit that's being said on Reddit is the dev apology developer note itself from the CEO. I'll be honest, I despise going to Reddit because it's just a place of a bunch of morons just gossiping and just hearsaying and just spreading misinformation, slander, and all of the above. But Reddit is also a very reliable place to go for circumstances like this. Usually you can rely on Reddit in a great deal when it comes to things like this. But it was hearsay until I saw the developer note and then I was like, holy shit, this is actually cooperating with everything they're saying. And the fact that the guy came out and just said it himself, just literally confirmed it, like in a court of law, you're cooked at that point. You just straight up just owned it. Oh man, things must have gotten so bad over there in Korea that he just didn't have a choice at this point. And like I said, you might be thinking, Smack, what is going on? There's a lot, okay? There's a lot to go over. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Okay, so I have a couple of Reddit links up. I also have the director's apology and addressing all of this stuff. There's a number of things to go over, but you're going to see once I bring up this letter and then I corroborate it into all the things that have been stating, you're going to come to find out that this was a pretty big deal. Starting off with this guy, this was posted. Let me go ahead and refresh this because these links have been up for quite some time. So 3 days ago, the real NTR drama is that the devs cucked us from a potentially good story, allegedly. So just real quick, everybody's basically blaming Owen. The incel thing I was explaining to you earlier, people are mad at Owen. They want the guy dead. This poor little dude in the game that's hardly doing anything. He's honestly like the little brother of the cast. They're blaming him for the lack of main protagonist glaze. All of the girls keep hanging out with him instead of hanging out with the main protag, and these people are furious about this. But once again, as funny as and entertaining and embarrassing as that shit sounds, this is not the core root of the problem. It's really not based off of what I've gathered. So this says, huge turn of events. There was a rumor about CZN that was posted in whistleblower community. There was original story writer, which was created CZN as a cosmic horror setting. Writer of that story was very famous, web novel writer who suddenly disappeared around time of CZN project. But rumor apparently said that this guy was kicked after the project brought previous writers from Epic 7 who bullied and canceled him. Again, this is hearsay, right? He left company at the end. This guy obviously has a bit of an English problem. He's like leaving out words that make me sound like a fucking caveman, so I apologize. One of the most renowned anime game companies in Korea once again, I'm gonna say that again. He left company at the end and joined one of the most renowned anime game companies in Korea after. The famous writer that got bullied. Remaining writers removed every trace of this original concept and turned it into Honkai Star Rail inspired sci-fi fantasy, which received poorly even from their own staff member. After this reception, even those bullies left just a few months before project, which is the reason why story is left with complete trash. I'll get into the details in a bit, but this guy isn't exactly lying or like just spreading news and slandering like the shit you normally see on Reddit. Now, a bit of this is compromised due to his own bias and feelings, but he's pretty much kind of like spitting here based off what I've seen. The rumor existed even before the official release, probably first acknowledged around July, but since there was no concrete evidence, even in Korea community thought of it as one of many possibilities. Until 2 days ago, one of the illustrators from Blue Archive confirmed that the suspected writer is actually working with them right now. suddenly confirming crucial part of rumor. This made all Korea community gather information together about all past leaked images, storylines, marketing from 1 to 2 years ago to see what game was like, and it revealed that it was indeed Cosmic Horror Time Loop storyline before. Now I know this guy's English is kind of cooked. He's basically saying they were being detective, and they came to find out that some of these rumors that have been speculative have ended up being confirmed because the guy ended up at Blue Archive, and then the other game that wasn't really like listed or whatever ended up being Chaos Zero Nightmare. And so this was one of the like Reddit posts that kind of like provided some substance to the situation. But once again, without this dev note, I wouldn't have taken any of this shit serious. The dev note is really what confirmed everything, and it'll make sense why. Next person. I just finished chapter 5, the story of Prologue. Chapter 3, Leona Trauma are pretty good. Quick break. You guys, if you go and look at my fucking Twitter, I'll just go ahead and pull it up right now. Here we go. Chaos Zero Nightmare, spoiler-free story update, pros and cons. TLDR, it's got some serious potential for a compelling story. Needs improvement on presentation quality. Cut down the fan service and self-insert so it can be truly appreciated when it does occur. More of chapter 3 dialogue and pacing. I pretty much said everything else was ass. I said dialogue quality is like a 4 or 5 out of 10. And I said everything else is kind of ass. But I said, but chapter 3, shit is good. Shit gets very good. It's an 8 out of 10 dialogue quality and pacing. I feel like I was reading a good light novel during this part, and each mission for the first time had me anticipating how it continues. TLDR, I loved chapter 3. I thought everything else was ass. Now we can go back to this because I put that out like very early. This dude said, just finished chapter 5, the story of Prologue. Chapter 3 is pretty good, whereas other parts of the story seem to be poo-poo quality. Was curious how the hell story this bad came through. There is a leak in Korea forum that explains why. The post claims that one of the stronger web novel writers, specifically someone known for writing good Lovecraftian horror, I don't know what the hell that means, was recruited as a story writer for CZN. This is now another person saying this, but apparently one of the existing scenario writers on the team got super political and basically started attacking that writer with weird ideological accusations. So the Lovecraftian writer got fed up and bailed from the project midway. The funny part is the person who caused the drama by making things political also ended up failing to keep up with the story workload and left as well. Now the company had to bring in totally new writers in a rush, and those new people apparently started patching together a really messy storyline. The quality tanked so badly that people in the industry are already talking about how Kazina's story team is basically abandoned, like burned to the ground. So now we had a second person going off about this exact same scenario. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, damn, if all of this is true, I can easily see why this would be a massive problem. Because once that type of ordeal gets out into the public, well, the public does what they do best. They run a smear campaign and a witch hunt because, well, they discovered that somebody has their pants down. They discovered that the company is doing bad business practice with a writer who's also a famous, well-renowned writer, which means he has a fan base in and of himself for creating stories revolving around horror, gritty, and dark themes with a little bit of waifu glaze in there. And so once that gets to the public, well, honestly, for once, I don't actually blame the public for popping off because they're basically defending some writer who was getting bullied at work for doing what he does best because of either jealous, insecure, or just, moronic other coworkers that won't let the man do his job he was hired to do. And then that gets out, and now you play the game on release, and the game story is quite shit, except for chapter 3. I don't know if that guy was actually working on chapter 3. That hasn't been confirmed yet, but it is odd that chapter 3, out of all the other stuff, is the only thing that's actually pretty damn redeeming in the sense of story consumption. Final one before we go into the developer note. This guy says, I noticed that the Korean version of the developer note is slightly different, and they have an additional note about the players complaining that they don't seem to be the focus of the story, likely referring to the Owen NTR. They said, take this matter very seriously and currently in discussion about improving the story. Went through Korean forum, and they are really, really mad about Owen NTR. Multiple posts cussing out the developers, saying that they are not going to play until they delete Owen and the involved female characters. I guess that's why the Korean developers note specifically mentions it. I didn't even realize it was an issue. Edit 3, if you don't want the story to be another harem slop fest, make sure to say in the survey once they send those out. At this point, Owen meeting an untimely death in the most gruesome way possible in the next storyline seems very likely. So this is where things get funny, because you can see at this point the internet's going to immediately assume, especially on the Western side, they do little to any fucking digging. They're going to be like, oh, so everybody's mad at Owen Let's just say that the whole thing is happening because of Owen, and that there are a bunch of incels angry that we're not getting that self-insert, self-glaze experience, which is funny because I fucking hate that part of stories. I can't stand that shit. And I think everybody who advocates that is a fucking loser who needs to get out of their room, stop looking for ways to fulfill your life vicariously through a fucking PNG, and get women to say something to that PNG so that you can feel a little bit of that when you can go outside there in the real world, shoot your fucking shot, and get that in real life. I think it's pathetic. I think it's embarrassing to call yourself a man and do these things. It's okay to glaze. It's okay to say, oh, holy titties on the screen, in my opinion. It's even okay to be like, oh, shit, man, that girl's hot. But to actually get emotionally invested in these characters and develop attachments to the point where you're like threatening people on the internet. And like you're generally, you are in a state where you actually need therapy, because you have gotten too invested in these PNG models. That is a real problem, and you should be ashamed of yourself. That said, that is the meme and the perspective of why all of this is happening. However, once I look at this dev note, that's where I just strongly disagree. I think Korea is pretty much ripping this company alive because of what actually happened to the guy getting bullied behind the scenes, getting out to the public. That makes the most logical and coherent sense as to why the company is getting on their knees and begging. And I'll explain it all here in just a bit. But this guy, this is the CEO, right? He said, I'm holding today's broadcast to deliver a sincere apology and make a firm commitment to our players. We acknowledge that many of you have been disappointed by recent issues in our service and operations. You know what sucks about this is there's a lot of issues with the game, right? And so what he's saying is not only addressing what happened behind the scenes, but also real problems that exist in the game, like localization over here in the West, like bugs that exist in the game where you're like trying to save, or like you're saving a file where you remove cards from your deck. I go back in my deck and the card is fucking still there. That's a bug. There's a number of annoying little things in the game that we have to put up with that still haven't been remedied. There's a lot, right? So those are actual issues that he said he apologized for. And then there's other issues that are like mixed in with this, such as the shit that happened in the office, the story, the fucking main protag basically feeling like a bystander as opposed to a main protagonist. In that regard, I kind of agree. He's not really like involved, and you can't even see what the hell he looks like. And then of course there's the Owen situation. So this guy's addressing like so many facets of issues all at once. As CEO, I feel a deep sense of responsibility, and I intend to clearly recognize and correct the mistakes that have been made. I'm not going to read this whole thing. He says he apologizes, right? I would like to address the service instability issues. That's another issue. Servers out of nowhere keep fucking hitting you with the load screen, the goddamn PlayStation 1 load screen for no reason. You're sitting here just waiting on it to like go back to being playable. Sometimes it just kicks you out the game entirely. He acknowledges that. Now I would like to address the story-related concerns. Here we go. This and this. These are the very like important ones. To all protos, every gacha company refers to their player base as a stupid ass jargon name. He's talking to people who play the game. To all people who play the game, who were disappointed and confused by a story that felt different from what you had anticipated, I offer my sincerest apologies. We fully understand how disheartening it must have been to feel like a mere observer, where you should have been the protagonist, fully immersed in the world of the game. In particular, I believe the way game characters built deeper bonds with other characters instead of the protagonist was a clear mistake on our part. Regrettably, I was aware of these narrative issues myself. However, as our pre-registration began in July and the official launch drew near, I became overly focused on keeping our promised release schedule. In that haste, I failed to ensure the quality of the story. Now, I want to stop right here because this is where I want to make the argument that it's not the fucking pencil dick dweebs, the Caterpies and Weedles that drove this particular assessment or apology addressing this situation. This is not directly pushed towards people who want Owen. I do think that's part of it, but I don't, like I said, I think that's fuel to the fire, not the fire itself. I found a comment on my brother Genazad's video. I was looking at a lot of shit trying to find as much concrete substance to the situation as I can. This comment was very interesting. Let me pull it up. Here we are. Hey, just a random Korean dude passing by, and I thought I should give you guys an update on this drama. AI illustration, accusation, and yeah, it could probably be just a mistake with layers and whatnot. He's basically saying like what people are pissed off about. NTR issue. It started as a meme, and it's not the main issue. Although there are some people that are actually triggered by this, they are still a minority. That's kind of what I interpreted, because it just doesn't make logical sense for a whole development team to get on the internet and just like, oh, fuck, I'm so sorry, guys. I'm sorry. Like, no shot. They'll just ignore them. They really will. They'll just fucking ignore them. Server issue. It is what it is. I remember waiting 2 hours to log in and gave up on it. Yeah, well, that's not the only server issue. It's also just loading randomly, arbitrarily as you play the game. Accounts randomly deleted. There are some saying that still haven't heard back from Smilegate, but the legibility of the statement is unknown. I would agree. Like, normally this is just, I usually, unless there is overwhelming proof, I assess this as just people doom posting and trying to just make the game look worse than what it is. Sorry, but it's valid to do that when you consider how many of these fucking morons are on the internet doing shit purely out of vitriol and malice. I know the drama evolved too fast for some people to follow. Heck, I might even be behind on this as well, considering how fast things go. But NTR was never the main problem, contrary to how Western communities know of it. I actually never once. The minute I heard all that, I was like, there's no fucking shot. It just doesn't make sense in reality. The main reason behind this drama was the very first version of the story was completely different from what we have right now. And the company advertised their game based on that first version, hence the Dark Loop storyline itself. He's referring to that dark, gritty horror theme paired with a sci-fi, what do you call it, with the Flash when he's going in multiple time remnants and time like rewind and forward and all that shit. This is actually still in the game. You can rewind time in your game, similar to Fire Emblem. To undo turns and stuff, but it wasn't just put in just for a game mechanic. It actually tied into the world building and the concept of the story. However, when you play the game right now, you're gonna be like, why is that in the game? Like conceptually wise, like logically wise, because we haven't really gotten to a point where right now, other than the main protagonist remembering some things and not remembering other things. The game makes a lot more sense in the first draft version. Why the gacha is called Rescue and not Recruit. So they were really over here cooking some Shakespeare shit with the jargons. It actually tied into the world building. Why we have turn revert system. Why Owen was being treated like a 10-year-old, because he is 10 years old in the first version. Why we have shared HP pool. I told you he was like the little brother. The naming behind Ascension, the naming behind the items we farm, everything just made sense. That's when I realized how great this game could be if it came out as promised. Now, this is why people also got mad, because we received a product that was altered so heavily from what they have advertised. That's also when we found out about original author of the story was forced to step down due to internal politics and such, and that fueled the entire Korea community to light up. See, this makes way more sense for the Korean community at large, basically like wanting to burn this company to the ground over there in Korea. Like, they are fucking pissed. And there's a lot of evidence of this when you go to the live stream and you just see the live stream comments and stuff. It's like 100% shitting on them. That doesn't happen from just a lack of self-insert, people not glazing the protagonist. I'm sorry, there's just not enough of those weirdos on the internet to drive that amount of furiosity. It doesn't process here. Anyways, continuing on. Then, a few hours prior to the live stream, we received a leaked Excel file for the story that the director himself wrote. This is wild, actually, if that's true. The fuck? Feels like a movie. This ultimately led to stepping down of the original author, as this story was voted as better than the original one by the story writers in the company. Mind you that these story writers were very close to the director and was brought over from other project. I think they were talking about Epic 7 to CZN team by this director, so it was rigged from the beginning. The new story director wrote was actually so bad that it didn't pass the internal test and got scrapped eventually, but some of the lines and settings will remain and got carried over to the current story. I feel like this was like chapter 3 potentially. You know what I mean? All of this was confirmed as true by the director during the live stream, which was pretty shocking to hear. Everything this guy just meant, you can treat it as, oh, it's just a comment. But when you look at the developer note, it all like corroborates what everything is being like put out on the internet. It really does all add up. Let's continue on. Out of concern that delaying the launch might cause further complications, I made the careless decision to leave certain improvements for post-launch updates left unfinished, right? About the story. I sincerely apologize for that. As the saying goes, better late than never. We have therefore decided to restructure the main story. So this is the CEO saying this shit himself, okay? This is like, holy fucking shit show. Our scenario team has already begun the overhaul with strong passion and a clear determination to improve. And our entire development team is joining to do everything in our power to ensure it. Yeah. But be real, it's not looking good for the Korean side. Western side, I still don't really give a flying fuck, other than the way that they did the guy in the office who was paid to do his job. That's a shitty way to treat somebody, and he literally attests to it and affirms it in this note. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm here to play the game because I like the fucking game. I don't really care about internal politics and all this garbage going on behind the scenes, because as I say this all the goddamn time, people don't take me serious when I say it. All of these gacha companies are the fucking same, bro. At the end of the day, it's a bunch of people trying to get a bag, and also at the same time simultaneously fulfill the satisfaction of the consumer that plays the game that they're putting in front of them. It's like, hey, if we can make this guy happy, cool. But at the end of the day, we're trying to get a bag. These people aren't fucking perfect. They're not your friends. They're not like angels and saints sitting in the fucking office, bro, just diligently working, never doing anything wrong. There's a lot of muddy waters in many industries. But continuing on, the reason behind the scenario writer departure has also become a point of controversy. It is true that the majority of the scenario team left the studio last year. There it is. He confirms it straight from the horse's mouth. The reason was none other than my excessive interference. This is an insane thing to admit, right? No sane CEO or person is going to admit to this. If they do, shit must have really got out of hand and got leaked to the public to the point where there's no more denying it. I think the situation in Korea, in terms of the bad business ethics that was occurring behind the scenes, leaked to the public like entirely. You can't even deny it at that point. And this is why the guy pretty much had to come on here. Again, this is just me shooting it straight and looking at things, trying to be objective where I can and trying to be fairly subjective where I can too. This is just like based off all this aggregated data. But anyways, I also don't even know if he's the only person. He might just be the type of guy that's saying, I'm going to take the hit. I'm going to tank it entirely. There's other people who actually are at fault here, but I'm going to tank the fucking hit. I just take it as my responsibility. Or it could just be him that was doing it. I don't even know. But based off of everything we've been hearing, it seems like it was more than one person, one party involved here, right? That said, in a court of law, this dude saying this means everybody else got cooked and all the blame's falling on him, right? And so it is what it is, but this is just wild to see. As the deadline for the final script approached, I grew impatient and made the reckless decision to participate directly in the writing process and push the project forward. Bro thought he was him. Bro thought he was him. He said, nah, brother, I'm Shakespeare. I'll just do this shit myself. Fuck the guy who's a professional, bro. I'll just do this shit. This is insane. The scenario writers I worked with were talented individuals, but my excessive ambition and interference ultimately stifled their creativity. That environment inevitably led to disappointing results, which weighs heavily on my heart. Bro, it takes insane balls to just write this shit out. The main story was completed under severe time constraints and various limitations. Those who had worked on it have since left the company, and their departure rests entirely on my shoulders. I sincerely apologize once again. As a man who's been through quite a bit of life, brother, I really have. I've seen a lot. There's no shot this fucking guy is the single-handed person to blame. No way. Not with all the evidence we've already gathered. I actually respect him because I can easily, from a fucking mile away, see that he's just taking on the bulk of the blame. There's other people involved in this that are just as guilty, but brother is just tanking it. So I just want to go ahead and just lay that out there. Our new scenario team is currently working on fresh content, including the final part of the epilogue and trauma code. I am now collaborating closely with the team, respecting their creative space and striving to maintain a true sense of partnership throughout the process. So I'm gonna be real. I think the story's cooked. I do. Chapter 3 was the only thing that was redeeming of it. Everything else is dog shit. And honestly, trying to pick up the pieces of a puzzle from another guy, he has his own vision, his own way of doing everything. It's like, bro, it's like somebody taking over Harry Potter for J.K. Rowling. Only she envisioned how that shit was going to go. You get what I'm saying? It's like somebody trying to take over for DBZ. Only the DBZ guy can envision how that's going to go. One Piece. Think about Boruto, for example, right? There's new people who tried to take over the Boruto show. Sorry, brother, but you aren't the original writer. It's just, that's not how things work. Once this happens, there's going to be change that probably, the original recipe that initially brought about people's interests it's quite cooked. It's quite cooked. And so for me, all of this story shit, it's just a skip fest for me. Through on and out. trust lost. Don't give a fuck how hard y'all are working on it. I'm skipping the living shit out of that story. Not worth my time as based off of everything I've seen. But that said, the gameplay is still the core part of the game that many of us enjoy, especially over here on the Western side. But when we look at how serious this situation is in accordance to the CEO and the Korean side, the game is probably going to take a hit in the gameplay department due to how much focus they're now going to allocate towards story. And let me just go ahead and full screen here. Now that you guys understand all of that, I would like to say the people that were thinking this is an Owen meme and the reason all of this is happening is because of the NTR like shit show that sounds funny. There's no fucking shot. What happened is bad business ethics got out to the public. Once you take that into consideration, you know what? I actually wrote this out I don't even have to like fucking off the cuff it to explain it to you. I wrote it out so that you guys can understand where I'm coming from. Let's take a look at that shit, Smack. Go ahead and go to the good old notepad God mode here. Fuck's happening with Chaos Zero Nightmare? Famous writer, renowned for horror, gritty, dark self-insert web novels, was bullied out of his position for writing the CZN story by other CZN team members. This caused the entire story quality to collapse as they couldn't find anyone to replace him while dealing with deadlines, time constraints, and current story direction. More writers quit due to the stress of the situation, which caused the story to really take a hit. They hire more writers that pick up story in its current state. Objectively, this kind of discourse internally and lack of cohesion can also cause various tasks to be delayed, left incomplete, and also fall apart, such as story, gameplay, polish, and refinement. In Korea, the famous writer getting bullied out of his position gets to the public and shit goes deeply south from here. The problem is, Smilegate already has a stain on their reputation with players from their other games, Epic 7 and Lost Ark. Considering this history on top of this current situation, that's all the public needs to run a smear campaign and start popping the fuck off. The game releases, and to be fair, the story is actually incredibly lackluster in a number of ways, but Chapter 3 was actually solid. The public perception is really good in the West due to gameplay, but the game is being completely shit on in Korea due to bad story and this political conflict that got out. Now, with that understanding undermined, everyone is like treating this company like Satan. Honestly, I'm not gonna say rightfully so, but there's credibility and merit to that witch hunt due to what got out to the public. And so when you consider that, they're already burning, right? They're burning. At this point, it's a dog pile. You get the people from the NTR debacle going, yeah, man, you better fix this shit. You get the people coming over here like, fuck you from Epic 7. You get the people from Lost Ark saying, yeah, I told you this company ain't shit. And then you get everybody collectively just going at them. This would drive any company to be like, we have to put our pride down, put everything down, and just straight up apologize and try to make amends where we can. When you think about that, I would say that's the reason all of this is happening. It makes the most sense logically, as opposed to, oh, it's all happening because of the NTR shit. It doesn't make sense, right? And it's an unfortunate situation because what I think about fundamentally is it doesn't matter how much revenue is coming from the West, the East. Their reputation starts in Korea. And if everyone in Korea hates them, it's not a good look for any company. What do you think the investors are going to say about that? They're going to be like, fuck this, bro. You guys have the shittest reputation of all time. We're not working with y'all. It's a bad situation. And so they have to drop everything that they are currently working on to try and make amends where they can. This is ultimately, in my mind, being completely fair, it's going to be a punch in the gut to the gameplay and whatever the hell plans they had to improve that gameplay, replay value, and so on and so forth. That is why this is kind of a problem for the Western audience too. You might be thinking, yeah, we're chilling over here, bro. How does this affect the game? It affects the game because what do you think is going to happen when that development time that was currently going to the shit we love now has to stop and go towards story slop and deal with, customer service and all these other things? They can hire another team, sure, but it's still gonna, I've never seen this situation remedy itself. Let's just put it that way. Based off all past experiences, when I see things like this, it usually spells disaster and it spells a good game getting fucked in the end. Now, hopefully that ends up being, completely untrue and proven wrong. But the test of time, boys, that's all you can rely on. And I want to continue playing the game, but the minute I see those red flags and I see, oh shit, nothing's actually changing. This is just it's the gacha game story all over again. Strong bones, but bones that never get fed any real nutrients, so the bones crumble, man. We'll see what happens. That is pretty much my assessment of that whole debacle. Sorry if that was long-winded. Like I said, bro, there was 87 things going on. Comment down below. Let me know what you think. That's going to wrap it up.